I think I would be incredibly hypocritical to hyper-focus on a burned Waymo when literally 100 meters away from that burned Waymo are people being burned with chemical weapons that are being deployed on them by the police force. That, I think, is infinitely more damaging than the bottom line of Google-owned Waymo. If they were going after these like supposed rugged criminals, they wouldn't be going to the courthouses. They wouldn't be going to places of business. These are the people they know. These are the people that ICE already has proper documentation on. The people that they track the movements of, because those very same people are collaborating with ICE or collaborating with the federal government, cooperating with the federal government. How do they know there's an undocumented migrant working at a work site? Oh, that's right. Because that undocumented migrant that is awaiting their court date to become a documented citizen, okay, is working there with the proper authorization with a tax ID that goes back to the IRS. ICE is getting that information from the IRS because remember, they lie and say that immigrants are actually lazy or immigrants are actually not working or immigrants are actually stealing our subsidies or stealing our welfare state or whatever. They're not even able to use the amenities of the welfare state while they actually pay into said welfare state through their labor. They pay taxes, and the IRS knows exactly where they're at any given moment. And ICE is getting this information from the IRS. Is there evidence for this? Do you think I'm making this up? Yes, of course there's evidence for this. The Internal Revenue Service finalized a memorandum of understanding with Immigration and Customs Enforcement on April 7, 2025 to share sensitive taxpayer information to aid in deportation efforts. This agreement permits ICE to do the following: confirm the names, addresses, and tax data for individuals facing final orders of removal or under federal criminal investigation, including investigations for failing to leave the country after 90 days. So what ends up happening here is that instead of offering them the proper documentation and paperwork to continue working in the country, what the immigration courts in cooperation with the federal government and their needs will decide that that you are no longer eligible to remain in the country, okay, unceremoniously for no cause whatsoever, because it corresponds to the anti-immigrant white nativist agenda that this administration has designed. So they just go, sorry, you're not allowed anymore. You've been here for 10 years. You've been here for 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. You have actually cooperated with ICE the entire time. But sorry, now you're done. This is how it works. So these aren't the rugged criminals. These are the people who perhaps naively think that the federal government is not going to fuck them over because they're tax-paying workers that have the proper authorization to work. This unprecedented agreement represents a drastic shift away from IRS's longstanding commitment to taxpayer privacy. Taxpayer information is strictly confidential, with the IRS privacy laws only permitting information sharing with law enforcement authorities in very specific and narrow circumstances to help in certain criminal investigations. Acting IRS Commissioner Melanie Cross, who was appointed by President Trump earlier in 2025, resigned in protest over the signed agreement. Other top IRS officials, including Chief Privacy Officer Kathleen Walters and Chief Privacy Officer Teresa Hunter, also resigned over concerns that the MOU likely violates taxpayer privacy law. The MOU primarily dictates how ICE agents will request the information and handle the data provided to them by the IRS. According to terms of the MOU, this new data sharing allows ICE to make a request for a taxpayer's name, address, and taxable periods for which the return of information pertains, while providing IRS with the federal criminal statute being investigated and an explanation of why disclosure of this information is important to their investigation. After the IRS receives this request from ICE, they will match it with the administrative data, and if they find that the information is relevant to the investigation, the IRS will verify the information such as name and addresses. Parts of the agreement are redacted, preventing the public from fully knowing the agreement's scope. Again, these are taxpayers. They are tax-paying migrant workers awaiting their proper authorization and full clearance for naturalization, or at least like a legal permanent residency status. Okay? They are in the country. They have an ongoing court case with immigration authorities. Many of you are fortunate enough to have been born on U.S. soil, myself included. It is a tremendous privilege that we all have So we don't understand the delicate and complicated nature of this process. A lot of people are automatically considered illegal immigrants or illegal aliens, if you want to call it that, like the administration does, because the administration chooses to now decide they are illegally on U.S. soil. This is precisely the reason why I always say the difference between an undocumented migrant and a documented one is just simply the push of a button. It's just paperwork. It's just proper documentation and proper clearance. A lot of these people that they're talking about, the overwhelming majority of these people that they're talking about, are actually here working, paying taxes, and have the proper clearance until the administration decides we are going to send a message that we don't want any black or brown people in this country. Okay. And we're going to shed the population of as many people as we can with whatever kind of ridiculous paperwork that we can throw in their direction. The reason why ICE raids have escalated in the last week is because Stephen Miller gave another directive to Kristi Noem, the Department of Homeland Security, and said, we want 5x the number of deportations. 5x. They have quotas. These people are not being removed in a lawful manner because they are rugged criminals. They are being removed from U.S. soil after living here for decades at times, who are often married to an American citizen, have U.S. citizen children that were born here, that only know America as their home, and they're being removed from U.S. soil and potentially being sent to a slave labor colony because there is a quota that has been enforced by the most rabid, virulent racist, Stephen Miller. That's the only reason. Here, Stephen Miller told ICE agents to target Home Depot, where day laborers typically gather, or 7-Eleven. He bet he and a handful of agents could go on the streets of D.C. and arrest 30 people right away. Who here thinks they can do it? Miller asked, asking for a show of hands. Agents didn't need to develop target lists of immigrants suspected of being in the U.S. illegally, a long-standing practice, Miller said. Instead, he directed them to target Home Depot, where day laborers typically gather for hire, or 7-Eleven. Convenience stores. Miller bet that he and a handful of agents could go out on the streets of Washington, D.C. and arrest 30 people right away. ICE agents appeared to follow Miller's tip and conducted an immigration sweep Friday at the Home Depot in predominantly Latino neighborhood of Westlake in Los Angeles, helping set off a weekend of protests around Los Angeles County, including at the Federal Detention Center in the city's downtown. On Saturday, Trump ordered 2,000 National Guard troops to Southern California despite objections from Governor Gavin Newsom. Those people that they're sweeping, this is what I mean when I say a dragnet, by the way, because here's what they do, okay? Here's the other technique. They know exactly how many migrants, both the migrants that have a removal order on them that they just got out of nowhere because the courts wanted to, the courts are also obviously working in unison with the administration. Immigrant courts are not a third party that is completely removed from the administration. They are working in unison with the executive office. Okay. So they will either remove the, change the court dates without informing the person. And then when they don't show up, then they have a lawful removal order, knowing full well that there are other migrants with actual, like, full-blown documentation that are working at the same work site. They go in and they grab as many brown people as they can. That's literally how it works. Okay? They grab as many brown people as they can when they go into the work site, as many people as they think are illegal, as many people as they think are, looking foreign. That is what a dragnet is. And then once you are detained in that process, they try to, once again, revoke due process or do another thing that's really up. This is why immigrant attorneys always say, never sign paperwork. Okay? They literally will go in. They will even arrest people who are American citizens in the process. They will detain them in the process. Okay? And they will hand out paperwork to every single person that they know is not a full-blown naturalized U.S. citizen. That paperwork is a self-deportation order. So if you sign that paperwork because you don't speak English well, or because they lied to you about what the paperwork contains, which they can do legally, okay? It is not illegal for them to lie to you. That's the other side of this. That's insane. Okay? When you sign that piece of paperwork, it's over. You have signed your own self-deportation order. You signed a piece of paper that says you are going to self-deport. This is why you're not supposed to. This is why immigrant attorneys, if you have undocumented migrants in your family, tell them they should not sign any paperwork that ICE hands them, no matter what. The only piece of paper that you sign is the one that your attorney gives you. And you have still, right now, the legal right to an attorney. You can get one pro bono. When you go to your immigration court hearing, because they're supposed to take you there, you say, no, I'm not, signing any paperwork. When you stand in front of an immigration judge, you have to show why. Obviously, if the only thing you're going to say is your name and whatever, the only thing you ask for is, I want a lawyer. I want a lawyer. And if you don't have money for a lawyer, then the court has to assign you a lawyer for free. Again, one of the best parts about the American criminal justice system. Okay? Not for immigration, love? No, yes for immigration. What? Yes, for immigration as well. Yeah. If you're going to sign a piece of paper, no matter what they tell you, the only thing that you should ever sign is a piece of paper that your pro bono lawyer, or the lawyer that the legal counsel that you retain to hand you that piece of paperwork. That's the only thing you should be signing. Okay? This is how it works in immigration law as well. Even though, no, it's not only in criminal. In immigration law, you can also get a lawyer. You can also demand a lawyer. What are you guys saying? Giving advice to criminals? These people are not criminals, you idiot. I got into an argument with a family member who kept saying over. Okay, whatever. They need to do it the right way. Access to counsel in immigration court. Immigrants in immigration court do not have a right to government-appointed counsel. Lack of legal representation has a profound impact on immigrants' outcomes and removal proceedings. Okay. You can still ask for a lawyer, and you can still qualify for a pro bono lawyer. Okay? You can still qualify for a pro bono lawyer. All right? State doesn't appoint immigration attorney. That's conflict of interest. Only NGOs can help out. Yes, there are plenty of pro bono legal services in the forms of NGOs that actually offer this work. They offer this service. They will provide you a list of pro bono lawyers. Okay? Anyway. It's so funny that people are saying that it's not legal myth. If you can't afford an attorney, it will be appointed to you. Wait, what? Why can't I hear this? Where's the audio?
To an attorney. Well, Gideon established a requirement that states must provide attorneys to indigent defendants in felony cases. In a later case, the court clarified that the right to counsel applies to misdemeanor and petty offenses as well, as long as the defendant faces the possibility of incarceration. Now, the Supreme Court probably should have just stopped it right there. Unfortunately, it wasn't done tinkering with the right to counsel. Instead of adopting a simple standard like you get a lawyer if the offense could lead to jail time, the Supreme Court pulled an Avril Lavigne and couldn't help but go and make things complicated. In Scott versus Illinois, the court held that the state does not have to provide a lawyer for a misdemeanor unless in prison.
Yeah, it's true. States don't have to provide counsel if you make too much money. No, I know that, but that doesn't matter. The people that we're talking about are some of the poorest people in the country. Like what undocumented immigrant that was literally ripped away from a goddamn work site is not qualifying for pro bono counsel anyway. And pro bono isn't a court-appointed lawyer if we're talking about immigration court. But if we're talking about specifically, you have a right to an attorney, and if you can't pay for one, like the government is supposed to provide you with one, that is for, yes, that is a public defender. That is a public defender that obviously is given to people who don't have, they don't have a lot of money to begin with. You were correct about lawyers for immigration. They give you a list of pro bono lawyers that you have to contact. Yes. Know your rights when you face ICE. 1, you do not have to open the door. ICE does not have a right to enter your home without a valid warrant signed by a judge. It has to be a judicial warrant. An administrative warrant is not enough for them to open the door, okay? A lot of times they say they have an administrative warrant. When they say they have an administrative warrant, that is different from a judicial warrant. A judicial warrant is signed by a judge. If they have a judicial warrant, you can ask them to slip the warrant under the door with a signature from a judge. Okay? Number 2, you can ask them to leave. If they do not have a warrant and go inside your home, you can ask them to step outside and let them know you do not consent to a search. In the workplace, ICE does not have a right to enter employee-only areas without permission. Number 3, you can stay silent. The Fifth Amendment protects the right to remain silent and not to incriminate yourself. Number 4, you do not have to share your personal information. You are not obligated to provide personal information like your immigration status, place of birth, and criminal history. If asked, anything you say or do can be used against you. You should not lie. Number 5, you do not have to sign anything or hand over documents. You do not have any obligation to sign any document without speaking to an attorney, okay? You do not, I'm repeating this again, you do not have to sign anything until you speak to an attorney, okay? Yes, I didn't get dropped off. Twitch kicked me off, and I am back. I never even went anywhere. It was for 15 seconds. Number 6, you have a right to speak to an attorney. If you are detained, you can ask to speak to your attorney. ICE does not provide attorneys, so try to consult one in advance. Okay. And then there's a list that they have of like pro bono legal counsel for immigration attorneys. Make a plan. Be prepared. The federal government can deport anyone without lawful immigration status and people with status, e.g. lawful permanent residents and visa holders with certain criminal convictions. Make sure you have copies of your important documents and keep originals in a safe place. Consult a lawyer before ICE comes to your door. Make a family plan. Identify an emergency caretaker for your children. Memorize at least one emergency phone number. Know who your elected officials are. Consider keeping a signed DHS privacy waiver in a safe place so they can advocate for your own behalf. Notice it does not mention the right to have counsel appointed for you. That's the distinction you're missing here. I love you, bro, but there's a difference between having a right to have an attorney. Yeah, I'm wrong. I understand that. The court does not have a legal responsibility to appoint you to a lawyer, but you do still have a right to retain legal counsel. And there are a shit ton of pro bono immigration attorneys that can do that legal counsel work for you. Okay? Yes, that is the distinction you're missing here. I love you, bro, but there's a difference between having a right to an attorney, which means you have them present for your case for you and perhaps even appear in your stead, and the right to having an attorney appointed for you and paid for by the state. Chatters in here were saying the courts do not actually provide this information. Like, there is no, bro, so hurt to be wrong. Wait, what? No, dude, I'm not hurt to be wrong. I was responding to the chatters that were saying, no, you do not have any opportunity to get legal counsel whatsoever for free. They're spreading dangerous misinformation. People that were claiming in the chat that there is no, you're getting one guy, boss. I know that people are so stupid because this is incredibly important information. Especially the fact that you should not sign anything. Okay, you should not sign anything unless your lawyer hands it to you, unless your retained pro bono or paid for legal counsel hands it to you. This is an incredibly important part of this process, specifically because, as I said already, they literally will give migrants that are either awaiting their court date or migrants that are authorized to work on U.S. soil a piece of paperwork that is in English, even if they know that the person doesn't speak English, especially when they know the person doesn't speak English or doesn't speak English very well. They hand them a piece of paper that quite literally is a self-deportation note. And when you sign that, not knowing what you're signing, you end up signing your own deportation. You're offering the government clearance to deport you legally. Jesus. Anyway, clip from CNN reporter at the protest.
Press. He's press. He's with me. He's with me.
I have my verification right here. He doesn't come through. You do. Sir. I have to go with
Huh. I wonder why they wouldn't let him through. Interesting. I can't seem to figure out why they would let the lady through and the cameraman through, but not that guy.
Are you grabbing me?
No, I didn't touch you. So wait, okay.
I need you guys to go over there.
So it's, you can see, Jake, it's a little chaotic. So what they're trying to do is...
You guys gotta keep walking.
We're going to keep walking. We're going to keep walking. And then I want you to take a look over here. Police. Press. He's with me.
Peter Griffin paper bag test. Yeah. Live look. Crowd in downtown LA for the 5th day of anti-ICE protests. Oh shit. They're bunching up around the freeway. And of course, cops are instantly mobilized.
I need to know if that's CHP or it looks like LAPD. I just want to make sure. They should be. Yeah, they're LAPD. No, California Highway Patrol. Yeah, that's their dark uniforms. Okay.
What
Yep,
if you can't read? Someone undocumented I know can't read in English or Spanish. That's why I said don't sign anything. I know. Hasanabi is correct about forcing migrants to sign documents in English. They did it to workers at the meat plants in Omaha today. ICE raid rocks Nebraska meatpacking plant. Protesters clash with law enforcement. Okay. We e-verify every single employee. That process is apparently no good. The federal agents told us the system is broken even though employees are e-verified. They raided the Glen Valley Foods plant. Based on ongoing criminal investigation into large-scale employment of aliens without authorization to work in the United States, the worksite enforcement operation is likely the largest to take place in Nebraska. Oh, the other side that I was going to mention, the other thing, like I said, is when they do these dragnets, they grab everybody, even if you have the proper paperwork, even if you're literally an American citizen, but you just look Hispanic, right? And there are some other people that get grabbed. All it takes is for one person. They're claiming that they're going after one individual. All it takes is for a judge to say this one individual is no longer authorized to be here. They don't have to have a criminal warrant or anything like that. Okay? They just say this migrant worker that previously had authorization to work in the United States, that was literally paying taxes, no longer can work in the United States. They are done. Okay? We've revoked their status. ICE will go to the facility not to enforce a deportation order on one singular person. They go to the facility with a ton more people. Why would they do that if they're actually enforcing the lawful removal of one singular person? It's because their goal is to grab as many people as possible, okay? Their goal is to grab as many people as possible, even some Americans along the way. It doesn't, they'll release the Americans, at least for now, right? But every single other person that is an authorized migrant worker in that facility will then also get deported. They're called collateral arrests, okay? They are called collateral arrests. So when they're in the process of enforcing a lawful deportation order, even if that lawful deportation order is not so lawful when you look into it, okay? Not because like the person committed a crime or anything, they will engage in what is known as a collateral arrest. That means that they are basically arresting every single person and then fixing the books after the fact. And the reason why they do this collateral detainment and subsequent deportation is because they want to get the quotas. That's it. And they do a bunch of comically evil shit as well, like truly heinous. ICE releases Honduran mother who was detained in Aurora for months after DoorDash delivery arrest. Carla Medina, who has won her asylum case, is reunited with her family. Carla Medina was released from the immigration detention facility in Aurora on Monday, almost 8 months after the Honduran mother of two was first detained while attempting to deliver a DoorDash order to Buckley Space Force Base. They order delivery, and then they apprehend the person in the process of delivery because they suspect her of being undocumented. Although she and her family first sought asylum in the United States in 2023, with Medina specifically saying that she feared domestic violence and threats made by her ex-partner in Honduras, she was still locked away for 8 months. That, by the way, happened under the Biden administration. Just so you know, that didn't happen under the Trump administration. That initially happened under the Biden administration. Before you say, this would not be happening. 50 minutes into the stream, no, my stream shut off and restarted. When you see Tom Homan on television and you're like, what is this monstrosity? What is this Baron Harkonnen type? Like, where did this freak come from? He was first introduced and appointed to ICE or to the Department of Homeland Security by Barack Obama, okay? Make no fucking mistake. He is Obama's creation, chat. Just so you understand. When people say like, oh, dude, CBP, sorry, Customs and Border Patrol. Well, that's under DHS. But anyway, Border Patrol of the Texas border drive around neighborhoods in unmarked cars with Tamaulipas license plates. The whole honey trap tactic they use at legitimate and legal USCIS appointments is so sinister, completely eroding trust in the actual legal system they claim to want people to use. Why would anyone ever go to a USCIS appointment ever again? They've ruined the concept for generations to come. And I say this as someone who doesn't even agree with the need to do it the right way. Yeah. No, it's just like, in order to enforce these quotas, they are literally going after the people that are the most likely to cooperate with the authorities. Like, this is another thing that I keep stressing. You were saying about approval rating once ICE raids begin carried out in red states. Yeah, I mean, once they start packing up their neighbors in like Nebraska and shit, you'll see they won't like it either. I'm telling you, man, people like, dude, you got Mexican Americans in California that voted for Donald Trump thinking like, oh, it's not going to harm my family. It's not going to fuck my neighborhood up. Those are all good people. They believe the lies told by the administration. And why shouldn't they believe the lies told by the administration that there is like an insane number of criminal migrants out there, but there's also a healthy number of non-criminal immigrants out there, and the non-criminal immigrants are not going to be touched. This was such a common trope that we heard throughout the election cycle. Why do we hear this? Part of it was because even the Democrats also said, yeah, the Republicans are right. The Republicans are right. There is a real problem with migration. There's a real problem. Immigrants do constitute a national security threat. There needs to be more militancy directed against these criminal migrants. Instead of tackling the issue at its faulty premise, the notion that immigrants actually are doing a shit ton of crimes and getting away with it, they decided to lean into said faulty premise. Okay? This caused everyone to go, all right, I guess that's happening. Everyone's saying it. Might as well believe it. I mean, guys, I don't even know what to say at this point. Like, I drew comparisons to abortion, which is a major issue at the time and still is a major issue. People wanted to criminalize abortion until abortion was no longer unconditionally and constitutionally protected, at which point they realized, oops, maybe this is not the best idea. Oh, here's the sexy man. Remember the videos we watched during the immigrants are eating cats and dogs thing where half the people were like, wait, that's too, it's much worse with them gone. Anyway, just lies everywhere. Let's see what Bernie had to say after his disastrous tweet yesterday.
Take a moment to address what's going on in Los Angeles right now. Let's be clear. Trump's deployment of the National Guard and Marines in California is not about the protests. It is not about ICE, and it's really not about immigration. It's about using extremely dubious legal authority to expand his never-ending grasp for more power and his effort to move this country toward authoritarianism. This is a president, as you all know, who has usurped the constitutional responsibilities of Congress. He has threatened to impeach judges who rule against his policies. He has and is suing media for coverage that criticizes him. He has extorted money from law firms that have represented his opponents, and he is withholding funds from universities for teaching courses he doesn't like. In terms of what's happening in Los Angeles, let us understand that in our federalist form of government, local, state, federal, it is the governor of a state who deploys the National Guard, not the President of the United States. Trump's argument for his deployment of the troops is absurd and laughable. Does anyone really believe that we are in the midst of a foreign invasion or a rebellion against the United States? That, believe it or not, is his legal argument. Let's take stock of what Trump has done here. He has conducted massive illegal raids. He has provoked a counter response, and then he has called in the troops. That is how an authoritarian rules. In this unprecedented moment in modern American history, it is imperative that all of us, no matter what our political views may be, stand together against the president who has little respect for the rule of law or our Constitution.
I wish he would have just said this. I wish he just said this yesterday. Like, he got outflanked by Kamala, dude. If Kamala is outflanking you, you're cooked. You're totally and utterly cooked. This was my response to Bernie's initial tweet where he's like, Dr. King defeated racist government officials and ended segregation through disciplined, nonviolent resistance. Defeating Trumpism, oligarchy, and authoritarianism requires that same level of discipline. Violent protests are counterproductive and play right into Trump's playbook. This is liberalism through and through. Like, the notion, you don't ever have to hand it to the right, man. You don't ever have to capitulate to right-wing framing. When you even invoke violent protests, when you even mention that the protests are even a little bit violent, you are not actually reaching out to the reasonable moderates or something. You are simply giving more ammunition. You're simply giving more ammunition to the right at a time when they are looking for any reason to create a ridiculous and illegal response. I responded to him saying, you were literally there at the nonviolent protest that everyone considered to be violent and unpopular, so I have no idea what this statement does other than lean into the hysteria that gives Trump enough momentum to mobilize the Marines on U.S. soil illegally. Trump doesn't need Bernie Sanders' go-ahead to claim that the protests are violent. But there is no reason to give him that at all. I plan to lead another nonviolent march tomorrow. This is the way that the media presented Martin Luther King's nonviolent protests. Because nonviolent and civil acts of disobedience, when met with police force, still look as though they are violent instances of chaos to the onlookers. Okay? It's always the police and their escalation of violence that ends up making things more chaotic. And I also followed up by doing this and showing that plenty of people were unfavorable to the entire civil rights struggle, especially white respondents. At in 1966, 85% of white people hated the demonstrations by black people. In 1966. Yes, I covered the cop shooting the dude directly in the groin. What does police brutality have to do with the looting that they're doing? What does the looting have to do with the actual protests? Answer the question, bitch. Are you talking to me or are you talking to the other chatter? Are there gonna be opportunists? Of course. Of course there are. What does that have to do with the protests? I do find it very funny that people will just be like, oh man, I was just about to join in. I was just about to join in on these protests, but then I saw people looting and, can't do it anymore. Oh, I was just around the corner. I was driving up to the protest to join because I think it's unconscionable that people are just getting black-bagged and shipped overseas for no real reason, for no good reason whatsoever. But then I saw that they burned Waymos and it's like, well, can't do it. Oh, I was just about to go and protest side by side to defend my own community. But then I saw that they're not waving American flags or there isn't a sufficient number of American flags. So I just had to turn the car around, I don't know how this happened, but somewhere along the line, the media and all of these institutions ended up successfully causing onlookers and people that are in the margins, people that are in the periphery, to genuinely place the interests of property over the interests of human beings. But the reason why you even care about property damage is because of its impact on human beings to begin with. You're like, well, these are random innocent people. Like, they didn't deserve to have their storefront crashed into. They didn't deserve to have their shit stolen. Now they're going to incur a financial penalty for no reason, right? That's the reason why you care about property damage. That's the reason why you should care about property damage. And it's so interesting that people literally take it one step further and they go, no, I only care about property damage. I don't give a about humans. Like I said, the greatest example is from earlier today when that when the immigrant store owner was talking about how his storefront was broken into, and people that get mad at that would literally not even feel a moment of remorse if ICE had actually black bagged that guy. It makes no sense. What's worse for that family? Having the father ripped away from them and shipped off to a slave colony with no due process, or the storefront being broken into, you know? That's when libs hit you with the, well, two wrongs don't make a right. No, one is a much, much larger degree of wrong. It's like the same brain broken response from liberals to like Israel doing a genocide, and then them hyper focusing on the Houthis trying to present a militant response to said genocide, where they're like, well, the Houthis, they stopped ships from going through the Red Sea. They stopped commerce from flowing through the Red Sea. How dare they? It's like, okay, dude, Israel's doing a genocide, though. Like, what do you mean? Like, one is a significantly larger evil that warrants an immediate response.
Senator Fetterman said that your party loses the moral high ground when you guys refuse to condemn the violence that you were seeing in LA. What do you say to Senator Fetterman?
I mean, I think we should absolutely condemn the violence of ripping apart families, of ICE breaking the law.
Excellent. That's a certified classic Hasanabi style misdirection. Okay. When someone goes like, oh, you support terrorism, and you go, I don't support Israel. What are you talking about? Israel is a terrorist entity, and I don't support that terrorism. Perfect. No notes. Great. Oh, John Fetterman condemns the violence of the protests. Do you condemn the violence? Yes, I condemn the violence of ICE ripping apart families. Yes, I think it's unimaginable. It's unique. It's cruel. It's unjustifiable violence. I see you know your judo, madam. What's the crime? Wanting to consume a succulent Chinese meal? Get your hands off my penis. I think people need to judo chop this shit more frequently. Like, I'm serious. Politicians should be doing this judo flip every time, dude. Flip the faulty premise directly back at the person asking the question. Because it's not even incorrect to say that. It's like, okay, yeah, cars burned down. It's up. I agree. You know, it's dangerous for the protesters. All right. But you know what's way more aggressively violent? The federal government going after people in courtrooms, dude.
And I think we should absolutely condemn the violence of ripping apart families, of ICE breaking the law, of them going into elementary schools and churches and raiding workplaces. And I absolutely condemn ICE's consistently illegal activity and the fact that they are they're also rounding up U.S. citizens and also documented people who are here legally with no regard for the court system and judicial injunctions. And I think that if Senator Fetterman or anybody else is concerned with law and order, we should be looking at one of the most law-breaking agencies and administrations that we've seen in the United States. We also have a convicted felon in the White House as well.
Guys, John Fetterman saying that is also extra spicy and extra insane because Fetterman's wife was undocumented. John Fetterman's wife was undocumented. Here's John Fetterman, February 27, 2022. Proud as always to be with the Steel City Stonewall Democrats this afternoon. She's a U.S. citizen now, but she used to be undocumented. Okay? John Fetterman is on the record defending migrants in this country on a million different occasions. Okay. Yeah. Troops providing security for ICE in LA. What if these guys, when there's like any sort of response, any sort of reaction to this provocation, they have lethal weapons, chat? Look, like this isn't riot control. Okay. This isn't like crowd control. This isn't like, these are M4s. They got lethal weapons. LA is full of dangerous criminals, but not a single cop has been shot. I'd love to see how they justify this. I mean, there is no justification. It doesn't matter. People were ready to complain about Mexican flags, dude. You think people who are complaining about Mexican flags give a shit about anything? Anything at all? Yeah, they're all the people that they arrested, they're putting on buses. They're going to detain them for a day and then release them, obviously. But this was a process that was conducted by Joe Brandon, famously, and his administration against pro-Palestine demonstrators. It is a measure that these people, that the law enforcement takes on specifically to create a chilling effect on speech and demonstrations. The reason why they're doing this is because they're saying basically, hey, we have the power to arrest you. We have the power to detain you. We have the power to book you. And even if we release you the next day, it's over for the day. And you'll think twice before demonstrating again. What? Marines are reportedly refusing to take orders? No, I don't believe that shit. That seems so... Dude, really? Really? Shockwave streams? Jordan Allen Bailey, Catholic, married, father of 7, registered nurse, Irish, lover of Guinness and Irish whiskey. This is your source? Like you sitting at home? You're right, chatter. I'm famously not participating in these demonstrations at all. Every single day that I go out, these are like, he's LARPing. Also, if he's not LARPing, he's actually on the front lines. Okay, then he should be arrested. Now that I'm covering it from the... now that I'm covering it from home today so far, could still potentially go out to it. They're like, oh, classic. Sitting at home, asshole. It's interesting because it's like when I go out, when Marsh and I go out, we are extra careful not to do anything that could provoke a response from law enforcement. And we don't do anything illegal. It's all on the record. It's all on camera. I'm on camera the entire time.
That police are starting to
but that doesn't stop cops from shooting at me.
Maybe indicates to people who are intent on causing problems that there will be consequences for them. Would you say that might be a part of this, the reason that they're so able and quick about taking people into custody today?
Mark, this is all about optics. I've been thinking this for the last 72 hours, and it's become more and more obvious that the optics here are really the priority for all of these different agencies, our local departments, again, the higher ranks all the way up to the politicians. It's very apparent that they are in place and ready to take action to avoid some of the ugliest pictures that have been coming out in the overnight hours and earlier over the weekend. I will say, just as a raw fact, the number of protesters out on the street this afternoon, including the group here, including the group at the federal building, including the folks that even rushed the freeway, they are far outnumbered by the number of law enforcement that are out here this afternoon. I would say for every protester out here, there's probably about a half a dozen. And so that just kind of gives you an idea of the ratio, law enforcement to protester. They are far outnumbered by law enforcement.
Certainly, Chris, thank you.
Usually it's the other way around, right? Normally we're talking about how law enforcement is so overpowered and outnumbered. It is the exact opposite today.
Yeah, and after 5 days of demonstrations in this area, you would imagine, too, just the law enforcement response, not only the numbers, but just the organization for knowing which areas, which streets, and how to best control this crowd. That kind of increases every day that they've been out there. So that's certainly good news as things hopefully remain peaceful. We do want to get now to Josh Haskell, who's been
for people saying this is how they break people's will to protest. It doesn't work that way. This kind of reaction and retaliation only invites more. This kind of provocation only invites more of a response. The only thing that's stopping from large crowds from going out and taking to the streets right now is that it's a work day. That's it. This is exactly what happened with the pro-Palestinian demonstrations too. The only reason why they stopped is because of summer. Saturday is going to be a major media day as well.
The officers in those vehicles are over at that crowd of protesters who ran onto the 101 freeway and blocked traffic. But as Mark, Michelle, and Chris, you guys were just talking about, all day today, the California Highway Patrol has been stationed at every exit and entrance, even if we show you over there in the distance. That's more California Highway Patrol just waiting for something like this to happen. But I want to set the scene of where we're at. Most of the protests that we've seen today.
Chatters, yes, they will throw out the charges for all the people that were arrested. They usually always do that. It's not about like actually keeping them in holding. Okay, it's not about keeping them in holding. It's about actually getting them to stop protesting for the day. That's the point.
Obey that dispersal order. About 40 to 50 of them were taken into custody. This crowd remains, and this is what we're dealing with right now. It's not a large crowd. It's been peaceful for the most part, but I can tell you that different people are coming from all sorts of directions, and I want to show you.
Yeah, I should maybe worry about the optics of kidnapping children, but I'm told optics are only for people protesting the kidnapping of children. Breaking. Federal agents in plainclothes and unmarked cars tried to snatch first graders from LA elementary schools, told staff that they had parental consent. They lied. When pressed, they hid their IDs. Department of Homeland Security admits they sent them. This was a test run for a police state. Think about how insane that is.
After an unusual and disturbing visit, several federal agents from the Department of Homeland Security showed up at 2 elementary schools this week demanding to talk to students. What happened next has Superintendent Alberto Carvalho praising school workers and demanding answers. Eyewitness News reporter
Bro, they try to kidnap children, okay? They try to kidnap school children, like first graders and shit. What are we talking about, man? Yeah, the pedophile-ruled U.S. government is kidnapping children in broad daylight, but the deep state Republicans don't have a problem with it because the one doing it is a pedophile they like. And also, a lot of them are also pedophiles themselves. Pedocon is a theory only as far as like the theory of gravity is a theory, okay? Pedocon is a reality. These are all pedophiles, dude. Republicans, the overwhelming majority, holy every single Republican politician. Oh my Lord, dude. Oh my Lord. How many of them have to be outed as sex pests and pedophiles? It has already started. The protests are starting all around the country, in New York as well. By Saturday, this shit is going to be a biblical sized protest, because all the liberals are going to come out on Saturday. These are the people that are out on the streets right now. They're people just like you. They're nurses, they're teachers, they're doctors. We saw people from all different walks of life on the protests when we were out there. Okay. But also on Saturday, there is a libbed up version of the protest. So that is going to bring all of the wine moms, the Deborahs, the Barbaras, the Hanks, everyone and their mothers are going to be out. We will also be out, obviously. My worry is that there's going to be counter protesters. There's immediately in New York, there's counter protesters. This reminds me of that one kid who in New York, there were a bunch of people who were protesting outside of an ICE facility in New York. And this kid walked up to them and started talking to them about Palestine and shit. And the guys were like, what the fuck are you talking about, man? This is an ICE facility. We're protesting ICE kidnappings. And he's like, I don't know. I saw people with keffiyehs. So I got excited. And of course, there they are, the counter protesters. The optics of different flags, man. The optics of foreign flags. Loser. Please join us. Thank you, Donna Andrea, for making a flyer and arranging. Counter protest. There's only one solution: deportation revolution. Oh God, they're so lame. They're so goddamn lame. And urge the removal of non-citizens. Amazing community note. Representative Jordan has an Israeli flag outside of his office door. This is a message, not a flag. No, that's not a foreign flag, man. That's another state. That's like having a state flag, you know? Jim Jordan's simply putting his own, what the
like they were doing specific drills on crowd control. President Trump sent them yesterday to help the California National Guard with the LA protests. Eyewitness News reporter Rob McMillan live in Seal Beach with more on
Oh my God, the dumbest crayon eating hogs, dude. Oh my Lord, it is so curfew decision in 30 minutes. I think in order for me, I looked it up. While we were in the process of like looking at the curfew situation, I looked it up. I have to have a LAPD press pass potentially, and I can still get arrested even if I haven't for violating the curfew. If I were to go to the area, she's most likely going to put forward a limited curfew in certain parts of downtown Los Angeles. I'm trying to see if I'm trying to see how I can get potentially credentialed. Okay. It's not worth the slop. It's not slop. Do you know who coined the term Burger Reich? Yeah, me. I did. Why? Are other people outside of this community finally using it? No, I don't think Matt Christman said Burger Reich. Wait, was it Matt Christman? Did Matt Christman also say it? No, I think he said something different. No, Matt Christman coined treatlerites and the treats theory. He might have been, to be fair. I mean, he's brilliant. He's infinitely smarter than me. Yeah, Matt Christman came up with the grill pill. He came up with CNN talking about military ice raids.
It's different than the items that Mr. Miller talked about there perfectly, which kind of outlined that sort of dealing with the protests and having the National Guard and local law enforcement, state and local, deal with those individuals and those that are causing harm to be arrested. That is separate than having military officers, service members integrated into domestic enforcement operations. ICE operations, it's not like playing Call of Duty, and it is nothing like the sort of the capabilities that the Marine Corps, which would bring to the table, and the sort of lethality and the sort of capability and sort of the tactics and techniques, sort of integrating military forces into domestic immigration operations against those that had legal status here a few weeks ago that are non-criminals is extremely dangerous, both for the communities and for the service members themselves.
You know, John, to that end, the Marines getting additional training today, despite what Secretary Hex has said that they're fully trained in this additional training. What kind of training do you think that is?
Well, what the Marine Commandant testified today was that they had been trained in de-escalation and crowd control. These are incredibly highly trained Marines, though. This is the 2nd Marine 7th Battalion. They come from 29 Palms. They are specialists in operating in desert environments, in close quarters combat. They're a rifle company. So this would be a fairly dramatic departure from the work that they did from Guadalcanal to Anbar Province.
Karen Bass is on MSNBC with Chris Hayes right now. Hasanabi head Chris Hayes is interviewing the Los Angeles mayor.
In the beginning, this was going to be gang members, violent criminals, drug dealers. And I have a hard time imagining that's who is in a Home Depot parking lot. You know, in our city, we have day labor structures where people are not just hanging out. And so they were waiting. And day laborers are people who work every single day. They seek employment day after day. They are just trying to survive. And to have them being chased through a parking lot, or to have an office be raided where the family members are calling home saying, hey, I think I'm going to be detained. And then the family shows up with small children and they watch their parents be carted off, and then they can't contact them. They don't know where they are. The people that are detained have no legal representation or no access to legal representation. And from the immigrant rights community, which is a very well-developed, established community in Los Angeles, this is a serious departure from the way things were handled in the past.
The Deputy Chief of Staff of the White House, Stephen Miller, I want to say he has been talking about essentially you and the governor as guilty of essentially insurrection. He keeps using that word, and I want to read to you something he said about you. He said, Mayor again sides with the insurrection mob, tells ICE to abandon the city. Mayor Bass thinks it's shameful to defend the lives of ICE officers performing their constitutional duties, but not shameful that California spends billions subsidizing and rewarding the illegal alien invasion. What do you say to that?
Well, I mean, I think it's a despicable comment. The way that our city has been characterized as hordes of migrants that have taken over our city, we're crime-ridden and civil unrest everywhere, is just a despicable characterization for the city that in 12 months is going to be hosting the World Cup. And we are a city of immigrants.
No, it's
there are
not.
a lot of sectors of our economy that are completely dependent on immigrant labor. Try the construction industry, where people say that 40% of the construction workers are Latino. I would venture to say that it's a lot more than that. In some areas, it's more like 90%. And so when you hit an occupation or industries like that, the childcare industry, the women who are working in homes, the gardeners who are landscaping, the small business owners who are documented or undocumented, but all of them are contributing to our economy. And so if you create a sense of terror in that sector of our city, then you are going to impact the overall quality of life and economy in our city. I was talking to someone today who said they went to their grocery store and there were shelves that were empty because the people were afraid to come to work and stock the shelves. That's the impact of having raids that are just completely unnecessary.
Since you just referenced this, I want to play you something the president said about Los Angeles. I asked you about the Stephen Miller quote, and I don't want to engage too much back and forth, but the president is directing some significant resources and rhetorical fire at your city. Here's what he had to say about Los Angeles earlier today in front of active duty troops at Fort Bragg.
Within the span of a few decades, Los Angeles has gone from being one of the cleanest, safest, and most beautiful cities on earth to being a trash heap with entire neighborhoods under the control of transnational gangs and criminal networks. It's horrible.
What do you think of that?
I have no idea where he's talking about. It is not Los Angeles. I will tell you that when I look at some of the footage of what is happening, you can get the sense that there is civil unrest happening citywide. I have to tell you that the vandalism and the protests that you are looking at is taking place in several streets, individual streets in the downtown area. It is not even all of downtown. And so to depict our entire city this way, or to characterize our city that our city is under duress, is just not accurate. If you go 1 or 2 miles in either direction, you don't know that anything is happening at all. We do not need federal troops.
I'm so fed up with law enforcement. I can feel my blood pressure rising. I never thought I would be in this chat supporting you, but over the last 4 months, I've been watching you a lot through people who hate you, but I found myself consistently being like, this is the most disingenuous way of interpreting your view on things. The hate watchers unironically made me a fan of yours. Hell yeah. Welcome to the fight. There are many people like you in here. Trust me. Yeah. Hate watchers, hate watchers that come in from other communities indirectly create a pipeline to my commentary because I'm so consistently right about what I say is going to happen that inevitably people go, okay, well, he was right about this. And the dude who was yelling about his position was wrong. Sometimes it happens in real time, like that Hutch video that we watched, which is really funny, obviously. But usually it takes, a couple months. There were hella people at the protest that were saying that too.
As Donald Trump tries to justify his use of the military, California Senator Adam Schiff responds to the president. That's next.
We've waited so long for this.
Yeah, I mean, the Marine rule of... Ken wanted me to... Hold on. By the way, chatters, Ken wanted me to post this in my community because he knows we got a lot of fans, even active duty service members potentially. Hold on. Yeah, here it is. If you know anything about the use of force cards given the troops deployed to Los Angeles, text me securely via Signal at 202-510-1268. If you know anything about the use of force cards... This is just a sample. It's just one example of the use of force cards that normally are given out. Listen. Maybe you know somebody who knows somebody. I don't know. But you can send this. Oh, Sheriff's is the standard pass that's mostly used. Unfortunately, it takes some time for their turnaround. Here's the application. This is the LAPD one. Okay. I'm getting information on how to also fill a Los Angeles Sheriff's Department and a Los Angeles Police Department press clearance. Not that it stops the cops from still, deploying tear gas on me or even arresting me potentially for violating a curfew, but I'm trying to make sure that we do this in the best possible way. So I'm working on getting that clearance so I can maybe navigate a little bit easier. You might want to dress differently. What are these cards for? I assume Ken suspects that Lady Tony, thank you for the 50 gifted subs. I assume Ken suspects that these are going to be handed out for rules of engagement for all of the troops that are being deployed. Wear the nurse uniform. Yeah, I'm not wearing a MAGA hat. Here's the other thing, by the way. Murat, don't do that.
And they're on the move. They did head toward the front steps there of the federal building, but then they seem to have regrouped, and now they've decided to go back north on Los Angeles and westbound on Temple. Where their final destination may be, that is unknown, or if they're just going to circle downtown here for a while. But the group is large and continues to grow. Most of the demonstrators are on foot, but we do have some people that are in a caravan behind them in vehicles, and in front of them we noticed we did have some folks on bicycles. So different forms of transportation here that are participating.
Why do you support giving Cali back to Mexico as if Spain has a claim to America? As a California resident, I unconditionally and firmly offer my full support as a legal California tax-paying, natural-born U.S. citizen resident that pays a ton more in taxes than you ever will in your entire life. Believe that California should be rightfully under the protectorate of Claudia Sheinbaum and the Morena Party. That is right. Cal exit. Hashtag Cal exit. Hashtag Claudia Sheinbaum. Hashtag my queen. That is exactly what I want. That's called democracy. Okay, we are democratically being annexed by the wonderful, glorious state of Mexico. Send in the Mexican National Guard now. Save us. Liberate us. Liberate us. Claudia Sheinbaum. I will gladly become a second-class citizen under the protectorate of Claudia Sheinbaum, and maybe even get harassed for not knowing Spanish. It's fine. I'll learn, okay? I'll go from no hablo español to yo hablo español. Sí hablo español. Yeah. No mama's way. Oh my God. Wait, is that the guy? In Irvine, California, ICE agents drove a phalanx of military vehicles to arrest a person, though not for illegal immigration. They were seeking a resident's son who allegedly posted flyers alerting neighbors to the presence of ICE agents. Oh, I hate these pieces of shit. Never seen you simp so hard. Chinga la migra. I'm also fine with turning California into a forward operating base under the protectorate of Xi Jinping. That's another thing that I'm on board with as well. If it's not Claudia Sheinbaum, then Xi Jinping also I will democratically vote for. I don't know Mandarin either, but I am willing to learn. Seeing all the smart people rush to scold us and say these massive civil rights protests are a bad idea because 2020 protesters helped Trump. Anyways, I wonder who won the election that year. There were 8 straight months of protests before the election. While they weren't necessarily to help Democrats, Biden won. The idea that the protests, which influenced public opinion in a leftward manner, helped Trump isn't only absurd, it's gaslighting to the highest degree. This is a problem with the establishment. They don't see politics as a practice of changing minds or public opinion, as something the people can lead. They want to maintain total control on opinion, keep it to the least imaginative ambition, and gaslight you for calling it out. If you disagree with the goals of the protest, say that. Don't make some meta argument about how the public will feel about the protest. You're part of the public. Stop trying to be the boss of what the public does or does not get to feel. Sick of this completely cynical shtick. Exactly. My thoughts exactly. I hate this stupid ass song and dance that everybody entertains, that everybody must play, where it's like, oh, well, you know, I like the energy. I just don't like that you're protesting in a way that I don't think is the best way to protest. And like, it's not even me. I'm not even mad. I just think that other people might get mad. And it's like, no, you also don't like the protests. You don't like that there's any protest whatsoever, because you would much rather behave as though you have the morally consistent pro-immigrant framework, because obviously openly recognizing that you don't have that for holy that has 38,000 likes. Bro, the tide is shifting. The tide is shifting. The tide is shifting. The tide is shifting against these reactionary charlatans. I swear to God. Even on Twitter, oh my God. It was before I retweeted it. People who think protesting is bad are anti-American. It's not that they think the protesting is bad. I'm sure there's like things that they would be on board to protest, but they would probably be like modest tax cuts for small businesses or some shit. Okay? They wouldn't necessarily be, they would be modest tax cuts for small businesses. That's what they would protest for. Okay? Nothing else. That Hutch clip is peak. I know. Shouldn't everyone who cares about advocating for what they think is the best way to protest? I'm struggling to grasp the argument being made. Be okay with people protesting in less than ideal ways? Yes, that's unironically what I'm saying. Be okay with people protesting in less than ideal ways. That is precisely what I'm saying. Yes. Can I make it more clear? The reason why I say this is because if you understand the dynamic of state violence and different forms of structural violence, you understand that nothing the protesters have done so far, or nothing the protesters can really do, would ever meet the standard of violence of the state. This is precisely why there is a major asymmetry between the types of violence that the cops get to do, or the types of actions that the cops get to take, versus the protesters. The protesters are people like you. They're citizens. They're not an alien force, okay? They're citizens that come from different backgrounds, that come from different demographics, that are, you know, sometimes Mexican American, Argentinian American, Guatemalan American, okay? They're just like you. And they're protesting, which is, of course, perhaps one of the most American things that they can do. And when they are protesting overwhelmingly peacefully, the alternative on the other side, the escalations, almost always comes from the police. The police are the ones who deliberately provoke, deliberately anger. So if you ask this question like, oh, why are people not talking about the best ways to protest? There are good ways to protest, okay? Setting up mutual aid, ensuring that people have proper protective gear, masks, okay? Ear protection, eye protection in the form of goggles, and distributing said necessary items to the protesters. All of that stuff is fantastic, and that is appropriate in terms of talking about like how to best protest. Criticizing the protesters waving Mexican flags is not an appropriate criticism of the protest at all. Hyper-focusing on the limited amount of violence in response to the provocations from the cops, and violence that is marginal and that would never reach the standard of the state, are ridiculous criticisms of the protest, oftentimes dished out by people who have no interest in the protest whatsoever, but instead, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I was just confused by what people think is constructive criticism / equals you don't really care, you know? Yeah, I don't care. And I'm very open about not caring about this, because once again, people make a mountain out of a molehill out of the tiny infractions that happen in a decentralized grassroots movement that is an uncontrollable force for the most part, okay? Meanwhile, you have a systematized form of violence in policing, in riot control, in what they consider to be crowd control, okay? That is directed violence at the taxpayers who pay their salaries, who pay their weapons, who pay for their gear. That is not the best use of funds whatsoever. So when there is spontaneous bouts of retaliation, or when someone goes in and does something that I think is not good at all and dangerous, like burning a Waymo in the middle of a crowded street, I'm not going to focus on that too much, because ultimately I think I would be incredibly hypocritical to hyper focus on a burned Waymo when literally 100 meters away from that burned Waymo are people being burned with chemical weapons that are being deployed on them by the police force. That, I think, is infinitely more damaging than the bottom line of Google-owned Waymo. Okay? Yes, the best response to people pointing out imperfect protesting would be to point out that the police are shooting people in the head with rubber bullets. That's why I always redirect people's attention back to who actually is the real vector of harm here. Okay? Like, people talk about civilians stopping traffic for a short period of time in an effort to protest against ICE kidnapping their neighbors. Okay? ICE kidnapping their neighbors is the inflection point. It is an unjustifiable act of violence, serialized, systematized, and legalized by the state. It, of course, invites a reaction. It provokes people. It's understandable reaction to unjustifiable detentions. Okay? Now, in the process of that reaction, the police also block traffic for a lot longer than the citizens do. They block traffic for the rest of the night, as a matter of fact. And the reasons for why they block traffic is very different. Citizens block traffic to protest, okay, in a peaceful manner. It's a nuisance, sure, but it's ultimately a peaceful demonstration. Police block traffic to create a staging ground so that they can use said staging ground to continue brutalizing the citizens. But people never actually get mad about the police breaking shit or the police actually stopping traffic, okay? That's it. If you care about property damage, there are plenty of instances where cops are deploying incendiary explosive devices in a crowded neighborhood, lighting shit on fire, okay? Yeah, this protest is very safe, lol. This protest is very safe, actually. Like, it has been. Most protests are. The overwhelming majority of protests are safe until cops decide to escalate, because people don't operate with violent intention. They don't want to fight cops. Cops have gear. Cops have lethal weapons. Cops have less lethal weapons that they actively use. They have chemical weapons they use on crowds as a mechanism of dispersal. Why the would anybody do that? You think people just have a death wish? No. People only do that because they're there and the cops use it on them, and then they understandably get angry and throw things back at the riot police in response. Oftentimes it's just a bottle of water, which is nothing, right? It's nothing. When you got full tilt, like you got armor on, a bottle of water is nothing. Sometimes it might even be a rock. But if you get angry at a bottle of water being thrown at cops, then you should be unimaginably angry at the unconscionable violence that's coming from cops that are armed, that are heavily militarized, that are throwing incendiary explosive devices into a crowd of unarmed people. They shoot you with rubber bullets and pepper bags from a distance that could easily kill you. Think about that. This is the reason why I don't spend a crazy amount of time hyper focusing on, policing the protesters, because I think that is ultimately frivolous, it's ultimately unproductive, and it's most often deployed by people who have no interest in supporting these protesters whatsoever and are simply looking for a moral out to say, yeah, I was with the cause until I saw them wave non-American flags, or yeah, I was with the cause until I saw them, I don't know, one guy in a crowd of like thousands throw a water bottle at a cop. But I also think that the violence that came before and after that is totally valid when it's coming from the police. People only see protests through the lens of cops being the good guys holding order in retaliation of Western states, mainly the US and EU. Just imagine this. Not even the EU. Americans love watching French protest videos where dudes will just straight up duke it out in hand-to-hand combat with police. But when I once famously said, the more violence that you can do in self-defense to police, the more civilized the country is, people clipped that and lost their minds over it. The more you can engage in self-defense, the more there's parity between a police officer and a regular citizen, the more modern and the more civil a society truly is. Americans literally lose their minds at hearing that. That when they hear that, they go, what the are you saying? That is the most insane thing I've heard in life. It's not even in their, like, it's not even something that they can comprehend. The average American unironically believes that if a police officer's feelings are hurt, they should be able to kill you on the spot. It's crazy to me. They're people, right? Aren't they supposed to be people? They're not like a naturally occurring phenomena. Gray bars again. I need to fix these alerts, man. I might have to revamp my whole shtick. Do a full-blown overhaul. Ironically, LA has officially will enact curfew for parts of downtown Los Angeles, according to CNN. Even though I'm literally watching CNN right now and I don't see them saying that there will be a curfew. Yeah, what's funny about this, of course, is that it is the exact same sentiment behind the Second Amendment, which is why Republicans who believe in the Second Amendment, my Second Amendment is there to protect the first, that type of shit, are also the biggest bootlickers ever known to man. They just want to have their toys. They want to have their toys, and they want to be able to use it on like unsuspecting individuals who actually didn't do any crimes whatsoever, but simply were a nuisance to them. That's it. They're LARPers. They're fetishists. The average unarmed protester, the average queer English major unarmed protester with a septum ring and purple hair in Los Angeles that's out in the streets right now getting peppered and getting tear gassed is infinitely braver than the biggest Navy gravy seal, okay? The most like hopped up on steroids gravy seal with arsenal of weapons. That person's got no protection, and they're still out there non-binary, being all queer and purple-haired and with a septum ring and duking it out with the cops with no protection whatsoever. Go ahead, tell me that person isn't brave. Anyway, does that mean that you like the wokes now? I mean, if we're being honest about it, there's never been a moment where woke went away. I've been keeping it very much alive here. People seemingly never let me live that down. What the oh, remove paywall. LA police counter protesters. As LA police counter protesters, Trump doubles National Guard deployment. Officials contrast legitimate LA protesters with those looking for an opportunity to create chaos. 11 minutes ago. Wait, where's the... What we're seeing in Los Angeles goes far beyond Trump's calls for deporting criminals as a step towards authoritarianism. It's our democracy at crossroads. Watch live at 6:30 p.m. Tonight, Governor Newsom's address, Democracy at Crossroads. Why the fuck is he promoting this, dude? Like he's... When are you going to be arrested, Hasan? I don't know. Wouldn't you like that? Again, a pathetic and weak person who's like, I think you're a nuisance and I have no self-control and I can't just like click away from your stream. So I'm hoping that the government takes care of you. Like, how weak-minded, how much of a worm-like individual are you? You know? How much of a cowardly worm-like individual are you? Most likely spending years talking about how much you are a defender of free speech, only to turn around and be like, actually, I've decided speech that I don't like should be met with criminal penalties. At least the hysterical SJW archetype that you yelled about for years and years, that you fantasized as like making, fantasized as made video game titties smaller or whatever, actually has a morally righteous position. Maybe they're not the best on camera. Maybe they come across as kind of annoying, but ultimately they are on the morally correct side and they believe what they're saying. You, on the other hand, are pathetic. You have no discernible position. You're simply a pathetic worm who complained about SJWs only to turn around and demand that people you don't like get arrested. At least SJWs were just simply like censoring, I don't know, not censoring, but like trying to change art. Hasan Reactions is one of the best ones in the React channel.